It's a good thing styling my hair is literally going this direction. I actually am convinced it is starting to. I actually do look a little bit more blonde than I used to give myself credit for. Maybe, just maybe, I won't have to get it dyed come this new year after all. But, ladies and gentlemen, welcome all of you to Tuesday evening, and the struggle of the average Joe continues. The thinking man's working man. The journey continues. It also tell me, ladies and gentlemen, if you've never been in this position before, because I know you're lying. There are some days, ladies and gentlemen, that will literally go by where I will do all the things, come home from work, and then before I know it, I'm back in the office tomorrow. Tell me if you've ever been in this scenario before. And I used to be like this during the first 4 or 5 months when I was starting work 2.5 years ago. But what sort of like the reason why I stopped having that is because, ladies and gentlemen, it was around about this time when I had something I had my eyes on. I had a vision in mind to work on a plan. Not a plan to get out of the job I was at, but a plan that I could work on. Something that could keep my mind fresh and afloat. Something that, if it wasn't for stuff like that, then I would not be getting myself, all this. In fact, you know what? I'll tell you what, this calls for? This calls for some critical theory 101. So, let me see if I can get it out. What I love about the way I've done with the books here is that you just have to tilt it and it slides out like a glove. Right, so critical theory, let's see what we've got. And again, try this. If you have any one of these, you may want to just try this. Just pick a random page and hold your breath. Hybridity. Love the word already. A term used in contemporary post-colonial studies to theorize and to a certain degree celebrate a global state of mixedness. A mixedness of cultures, races, ethnicities, nations, and so on. The term is drawn from biology, where it is used to describe the intermingling of different strains of species of plants and animals to produce new species. The mule, for example, which is the offspring of a donkey and a horse, is a perfect example of a hybrid. Interestingly, in colonial and imperial disclosure of the 19th century, the term hybridity carried negative connotations and was used primarily to signal what the white races had to fear in miscegenation. Miscegenation. It's MISCEG. Miscegenation was left unchecked. Its meaning has effectively been reversed. In part, this is because an alternative affirmative use of the term is available in the work of Russian literary critic and theorist Nikolai Bakhtin, who uses it in the development of his key concepts and the carnivalesque and diagrammism today. The term is probably most closely associated with Homi Bhabha, who uses the term to stress the independency. Hang on one second. The independence of colonizer and colonized, and to therefore argue that one cannot claim a purity of racial or national identity. All identity, he maintains, is produced in a kind of third space which is in between the subject and the idealized other. The term is not without its critics, however. Even from within post-colonial studies, Aziz Ahmed, Chandra Taupad Mohanty, and Benita Parry have all offered critiques of the term on the grounds that it is an idealist and does not accurately reflect the reality on the ground. In other words, it doesn't pass what Toni Morrison has wittily described it as the taxi test, i.e., a hybrid identity might be fine in theory, but will a taxi still stop for you? These critics rightly point out that hybridity is too often used simply to uncritically describe a state of being, rather than analyze it. However, Nestor Garcia Cancilli also offers a utopian account of this term, which suggests a far greater depth than Ahmed, Parry, and Mohanty are prepared to credit. Further reading: A. Ahmed in Theory, Classes, National Literacies, Literates, 1992. Barber, The Location of Culture, 1994. Young Colonial Desire, 1995. And Garcia Cancili, Hybrid Cultures, 1995. So, I think the thing to gather from stuff like that, ladies and gentlemen, is that it's a clash. It's one of the great things about like the modern man is that in this modern day and age, we always like talk about a lot of the negatives, from fake news, people having to force their opinions in every corner of society, whether this is, in terms of like people understand that, like ethnical societies do exist. So, and you know what, that's just for me, that's just how it is. They exist, and we know they exist, and it doesn't mean that we can't interact with them. It doesn't mean that we can't be any different to them as we would be to anyone else. That's just how it is, and I've never once had a problem with stuff like this. In fact, you'll be very, very surprised what you can learn from people from different cultures. I remember there was a famous road when I was still in secondary school. It was called, it was famously called the West Road. It still is called the West Road, by the way. Basically, you get on a bus outside of my school, and it would literally take you all the way to a town in Newcastle, and you would pass by a lot of European shops. Most of them like little market stores, little supermarkets. Some of them would be like Albanian, Polish, Lithuanian, Russian, Romanian, and we even had like a few Italians living on the West Road, if I seem to remember. The point is that you'll be very, very surprised what you can actually learn from a lot of these streets and a lot of these tales. I mean, I never discovered that there was such a thing as blue Fanta before I went into a Lithuanian little shop. And I remember there's a corner shop just not too far away from where I work, and I usually actually get into really good discussions about religion with the people that run it. And they are very, very nice people. They are very, very good businessmen because they own supermarkets down in Birmingham. They run stores in Saudi Arabia. Very, very nice people. Very, very well educated. And I think what I'm trying to get out of hybridity, out of here, is that it's not just about understanding. It's the old, the more I know, the less I understand. I honestly feel like I understand, but that's why I want to know, because if I was all knowing, then I would literally still not have a clue about it if I really claimed to knew about it all, because, well, that's just, I was brought up, ladies and gentlemen, to understand exactly, what the consequences of my actions would be. I was brought up to understand that you should think before you speak, if that makes sense, or think before you act. And in consequence, ladies and gentlemen, that means that I've sort of almost seen life as like the passive observer. Like, I wouldn't say anything, but my mind would be going into overdrive nearly all the time. And I don't know if that's just a subsidiary effect of like Asperger's, or I wonder if it's even written in here, perhaps. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, if I'm getting really into this, but this is what I'm talking about. Hybridity means that, again, you become parts. You become something out of something else, and I don't know if this is just. I don't know if this is because I'm like a hybrid of like my environment, or a hybrid of the fact that I'm learning from my environment, or whether or not I took it upon myself that I had to be very, very world conscious and had to go out of my way to understand about the world. But I must first know about the world, know about the things that I do understand, but so I can actually put them into words. A lot of people could just express these things even if they don't even know the words they want to use. But again, that's the thing. We understand, but we know very little. And I want to know a lot more. It's a very avant-garde sort of approach. Attack of a okay, or fantasy, or let's see. It might not be in here, but let me take a look. Let's see. Over, let's see. Archive. Well, actually, there is. It's not in autism right here, but there is another word I can use. Aphasia, a language disorder that manifests itself as either an inability to speak or an inability to comprehend speech, or both. The disorder can vary in degrees of severity up to including complete loss of language. It may affect written language comprehension as well. Sigmund Freud, and more especially Roman Jakobson, were interested in aphasia, both seeing it as a key to understanding language more generally. Is it a case of like nationalized aphasia is why we can't use some of the words we want to use? Or in the long run, does it even matter? I think it means a little bit more, well, for someone like me who, listen, I love the idea of the human language. I really do. I love the fact there are ways in which we can communicate that simple gestures or shouting things in a very generalized way simply cannot. It just saying we need a car doesn't really work. It almost makes you look very, very passive aggressive to tourists and stuff like that. That's why I think it's such a shame that, you know, language barriers exist the way they do, because I reckon if we understood each other, you know what, taking language barriers away, if we were brought up to actually understand each other better, and maybe that's just aphasia in the modern world in the 21st century, is because of language barriers, because the world is so diverse and is so large and is so beyond anything we're in control of. That means that it's because we can't control it. That means we've got to learn to live, accept, and understand it. And the way to do that is to understand each other. And how do we understand each other? We must know what they are saying first. There is work to be done, ladies and gentlemen. There is always more work.